Worst WWE draft ever? What changed? Is it going to be Groundhog Day for WWE come May 6th for the next calendar year? One thing's for sure, last night's night one of the WWE Draft 2024 was a bit uninspiring. A lot of superstars remained on the same show. It wasn't really the shake-up that I think many of us were expecting, but this is a results and reaction video. I'll give you more reaction as we go through the draft picks. But first, here are the results. Firstly, Roman Reigns was ineligible for the draft at the last moment, so Roman Reigns was not featured in the draft, which gave a bit of exciting perspective of who would be the number one draft pick. SmackDown got the number one draft pick in round one and chose Bianca Belair. Totally worthy in my opinion. Bianca for me is one of the most consistent performers in the entire company, and I think that she does fantastic work week in and week out. I could be wrong by saying this, but I believe this could be the first time ever that a number one draft pick in WWE in the draft has been a female, so for me, long overdue. And like I say, Bianca being one of the most consistent performers in the entire company, I think this actually could have, perhaps should have, come a bit sooner. For Monday Night Raw's number one draft pick was a main event Jey Uso. Surprise to some that perhaps they didn't go for Seth Rollins, but Jey Uso is actually going to be challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship next week at Backlash against Damian Priest. I suppose Raw were fearful that perhaps if Jey Uso had won that championship, that maybe they would lose him to SmackDown and the championship in the draft. Those rules have not been made clear what happens in that scenario, so that's why Jey Uso probably felt like a main event pick, and for me, also makes me feel like they have big plans for Jey Uso still on Monday Night Raw. Next pick in round one was Kemi Hayes, and for me, there must have big plans for him to be in round one of the draft. This is the highest NXT draft pick of all time. Finn Balor was a draft pick in round one in 2016, but I believe was pick number 5 if I'm not mistaken. Kemi Hayes being number 3, awesome, although I would question why SmackDown went for Carmelo instead of Seth Rollins here, who was the next draft pick for Monday Night Raw. Seth Rollins is going to be on the shelf for a little while, that can be the excused reason, but Seth Rollins of course has star power, and has anyone noticed that frickin' has been dropped from his name on this show? Going into round 2, and Randy Orton remains on SmackDown. It seemed like a recurring theme so far. No one had switched shows apart from the NXT Call Up. However, this changed here now for Raw. Bron Breakker going to Monday nights. A lot of people laughing at the idea that Bron only signed with SmackDown 2 months ago. However, I feel completely the opposite. I think there's potential for a great storyline here, and I think it could actually be better for Bron Breakker's career. I'll take Bron Breakker first. On SmackDown, he'd only been doing squash matches in the 2 months he'd been there, not really seeing any storylines, didn't feature on WrestleMania. Of course, he was on NXT Stand and Deliver, so that could be the reason why. However, I didn't really see a direction for Bron Breakker on SmackDown. I think on Raw, there's going to be more time for him to develop and show what he is all about. And of course, being one of these stars that had recently signed for SmackDown, Nick Aldis has done all the work to get signatures down after the Royal Rumble before WrestleMania. To lose one of them already in Bron Breakker, what if he was to lose Jade Cargill, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, all to Monday Night Raw? All the hard work that Nick Aldis could have done could lead to nothing, all just being snapped up by Pierce by Raw in the draft, and of course that could then start a rivalry between Raw and SmackDown, which ultimately is what I want coming out of this. But moving on to the next draft pick, we've got Nia Jax. Makes the most sense for me. She'd run out of rivals to go against on Raw. She's already made herself quite a presence on SmackDown already, attacking Bayley and creating a triple threat match for Backlash between Bayley, Tiffany Stratton and Naomi, and Liv Morgan will remain on Raw. Also, that rounds up round 2, and of course Liv Morgan being on Raw still for me makes the most sense because she can hopefully win that Women's World Championship from Becky Lynch. Going on to round 3, and well, if you're a bit frustrated by the lack of draft moves, not much changes here. LA Knight remains on SmackDown, Ricochet remains on Raw, the Bloodline, of course, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Paul Heyman remain on SmackDown, and Sheamus remains on Raw. Now, for me, not a lot to take from this really. I think it's just a bit like, okay, but this is meant to be a draft, shake things up a little bit. Really was baffled by it. For one, AJ Styles has not been picked by this point, and of course he is going for the WWE Championship next week at Backlash, so how he's not actually been picked in round 3 is baffling for me at this point. The fact that Ricochet is picked above that as well doesn't make sense for me either. Perhaps this Speed Championship is going to be made into a bigger deal than perhaps what I expect it to be. But the real big story for me with this one is the Bloodline, because they hadn't been picked up by this point, and of course Roman Reigns has been eligible for the draft. Jey Uso has been picked for Raw. A part of me had a sneaky suspicion that they were going to be on Monday Night Raw. The fact that didn't happen really disappointed me. However, I am already starting to see potentially a different light. Maybe we could see Roman's side on Raw with Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso for example, and we could see this side of the bloodline on SmackDown. And of course, at some point, say Survivor Series, Raw versus SmackDown, they go head to head in War Games. Just saying, hypothetically, it could be show invasion through the bloodline, and that could be the way you could put things together. However, War Games has been the theme of Survivor Series for the last couple of years, not Raw versus SmackDown, so I must say I am a bit disappointed that they were like that. And of course, the fact that the commentary made reference to the bloodline wasn't even being picked made me think that could also have been a potential for a storyline. The fact that they were picked because nobody wanted them. They caused too much chaos, too much trouble in recent weeks. Solo Sikoa being so unhinged, adding new members, they don't know what they're getting in the bloodline. However, within 15 minutes, they were picked on SmackDown, and that story had finished. Moving on then to the last round of the draft, round 4, AJ Styles picked for SmackDown, staying on SmackDown at this point. Alpha Academy staying on Raw. I guess it makes sense with Chad Gable going for the Intercontinental Championship. However, like I say, it's just same old. Everyone's staying on the same show. Thankfully, though, the third actual superstar change happened here. Andrade to SmackDown. That could be fun. That could be interesting. Again, hadn't been doing too much on Raw. Had been added to a SmackDown feud last minute for WrestleMania. So, yeah, for me, it kind of makes sense. And, well, we got another NXT Call Up, the second NXT Call Up. And I must admit, I'm quite excited about the prospect of Kiana James being on Monday Night Raw. She's great in ring. She's doing great character work in NXT. I thought she was ready for the main event scene of NXT this upcoming year, but the fact that she's just getting the call to Monday Night Raw at this point means they see the potential, and potentially they think she can do more adding to a Raw than staying in NXT for another calendar year. So big congratulations to Kiana James and to Carmelo Hayes as well. I should have said that earlier on, because Carmelo has been more than ready for the main roster for a long time. And the fact that he's actually on SmackDown, for me, he'd done SmackDown in the winter when he was doing those appearances around December, January time, so that didn't really surprise me either. So those were all the draft picks on SmackDown this week, night 1 of the draft, but we did get some more draft picks after the show went off air, because some of the pool were not selected, so let's go through some of those for you right now. The OC, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson and Michin will remain on SmackDown, so again, a recurring theme staying on the show they're on. Shayna Baszler will stay on Raw, Zoe Stark will stay on Raw. Cedric Alexander and Ashanti the Adonis will stay on SmackDown. We finally get a change of show, this time for Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn moving to Monday Night Raw from SmackDown. Baron Corbin has been drafted from NXT to SmackDown, and Ivar will remain on Raw. Now, for me, just going through some of those draft picks very quickly, the OC not really been doing a lot, neither has Michin on SmackDown as of late. The OC have spent more time on NXT. I'm surprised they didn't move to NXT full time. Shayna Baszler for me and Zoe Stark, I thought they would be better suited going to SmackDown at this particular moment. However, they've been doing great work as a team as well. A lot of the women's tag teams are on Raw, so I'm not really going to complain too much about it. For me, Cedric and Ashanti the Adonis should have moved to NXT. I think that would have made a lot of sense to have done. I think just to build the chemistry with this team as well, they would have had proper TV time. NXT's tag team division as well is a bit thin for me at the moment, so I think that would have been a better move. Hopefully, though, they will get some TV time on Friday nights moving forward, because they've not had it for the last calendar year they've been on there. Really happy for Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn, as I said already. I think they'll have more potential to get some TV time on Raw. And of course, like I said, the women's tag team division is kind of over there, so they've been on SmackDown, just not really been able to fight anyone for the last calendar year. Baron Corbin, really happy for him to be called up to SmackDown. I think he's been a breath of fresh air in NXT. He seems to have found himself, it feels, a little bit in the last sort of 6 months or so he's been in NXT. However, I really enjoyed his partnership with Bron Breakker, so I'm disappointed actually that the draft pick has not been Baron Corbin to Raw or Bron Breakker to remain on SmackDown. I would like to see the Wolf Dogs have a bit of mileage on the main roster. And last but not least, Ivar for me, been doing fantastic work on Raw. I said on my videos beforehand, I thought he should remain on Raw, so I'm happy with this. I think on another show, he could potentially get lost in the shuffle. So that is the first night of the WWE Draft 2024. To say it's uninspiring would be fair. A lot of people staying on the same show. For me, it just isn't fun in the draft. I know that Triple H made a big, bold sentence at the start of this draft. Felt like he was going to cover things up a little bit, saying that, yes, you can actually gain superstars coming on the show, but you can lose superstars at the same time. It feels that both GMs are playing a cautious game. This could still lead into a storyline. This could still be something that could be building, because say they play it safe on night 1. What if Raw happens and it's complete chaos and everybody ends up changing shows. That would be a big dramatic twist and could lead to some fun and actually some pressure on the GMs. I like the idea of some storytelling. However, I just don't have the faith that that's what's going to happen. I just have the faith of like, well, maybe a few people need to move a show. Maybe the draft is seen as a branding thing that's a slight inconvenience. Maybe Triple H has these plans for all these superstars on these shows and feels that not many of them actually need to change. But for me, I think it's a missed opportunity. I'd like to see a big shake up here at this point. It felt like it was Triple H's baby for the first time properly, without some Vince McMahon involvement for the last few months. The fact as well this WrestleMania felt like it was without Vince McMahon involvement as well. So I just felt like maybe he could just refresh the rosters, have things completely in his vision, and just, you know, have a new WWE moving forward. But like I say at the moment, I don't feel that way coming away. I feel a bit uninspired after the draft, and it's what it is at this point. But let us know what you think in the comments. But I think the best picks of this draft so far, I would say Carmelo Hayes and Kiana James from NXT are pretty exciting call-ups for me, and I've got to say that I do like the idea of Bron Breakker going to Raw. If I'm honest, I think he'll get more TV time. I think he will get more over. I can see him being one of the top stars of Raw in 12 months' time. I think if he remained on SmackDown with who's remained on SmackDown at this point, I can see him being stuck as mid-card at best. But let me know what you think of this in the comments below. I will go and reckon, I do think it's been the worst draft I've seen so far in the years that WWE has been doing it. I think potentially they could go to a different method moving forward if this is how it's going to be. They have GMs now, for example. You have Adam Pearce, you have Nick Aldis. Why not have a bidding rivalry? Like, you know, it's like the Monday Night Wars all over again. Which show is better, Raw and SmackDown? Rewards are given to which show is seen as the better show. Perhaps maybe from the board of directors in form of draft picks, rewards like the Royal Rumble, the 30 spot, for example. Things like that could be quite interesting as a way to motivate the brands to be which is the best, because we've seen them discuss contracts and try and have bidding wars of who will go where. For example, Jade Cargill, Bron Breakker was one a short time ago as well. That was pretty exciting. I like that sort of stuff. So I think that should be more what's used, and perhaps people that are just defecting from shows, refusing to be on shows anymore, signing with the other side, I think could be a lot more fun, and having it sporadically throughout the year rather than having one actual draft season. For me, I think that would make more sense going forward if this is going to be how the WWE draft is presented. Well, how it's been presented for SmackDown, how it's going to be for Raw, and how it will be for moving forward. I'm all about shaking things up, making a new start, giving fresh matches and fresh storylines. And if we're not going to have that, then maybe we just need to freshen up in periods throughout the year. Maybe that's the best way to do it. But that's all from me anyway. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, share with a friend, and subscribe as well. Keep an eye on the channel as well, because I will be doing more content with Night 2 results of the draft as well. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves. I'll see you for the next video.